Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Butterfly Effect podcast. Today, me, Liam, and Luke are going to be talking about episode 4 of The Wolf Among Us, titled In Sheep's Clothing. If you've seen this series, you know what we do by now. We're going to run through the choices and then we're just going to come back and talk about various other aspects of the episode. So we're going to jump in with the first one, lads. Whether we decided to send Colin to the farm or not. Me personally, again, as I've said numerous times this series, I don't actually remember how much of this is going to be relevant come the final episode. But guys, what did you pick? I'll start with you, Liam.
My lips are sealed, mate. Nah, for real, I'll answer. You know what? I don't remember either. If I was to do it now, I think I'd probably. I think there was an option to kind of sit on the fence a little bit. I'd probably end up doing that, but I don't know. But for some reason, I have a feeling with my blind playthrough that the ending fate for Colin wasn't good. So, for some reason, I have a theory that maybe before, if you sit on the fence or something, it doesn't end well for him. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty sure I actually sent him to the farm here back then, but I don't think I would do that now. I don't think I could do it, 10 years later playing it today.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I know that I didn't send Colin to the farm because I didn't actually realise this was something you could change, because I know it's sort of like Colin and Toad are the two that go to the farm. And I always thought that it was kind of fixed, but it's like a very awkward time to throw that choice at you, because Snow's like putting her foot down, right, we're going to do things by the book, and the first thing she suggests, you're like, oh, Snow, I'm going to have to kind of side against you on this one, the pig stays.
Yeah, because there was a little bit of a Snow versus Colin situation going on there, wasn't there? You've got one with Snow saying that you've got to play by the rules, don't stoop to their level, don't become, the big scary wolf that everyone expects you to be. And then you've got Colin on the other side who's saying, well, sometimes you've got to fight fire with fire, he's got to do his own thing, stop holding him back. And yeah, I did side with Colin as well, and I chose not to send him to the farm because, admittedly, at first he was coming on pretty strong. He was like, oh, you let Crane get away, and I was like, all right, mate, do you know what I mean? My arm was broken, and Snow was there standing over me with a girl that was right above her head with an axe, so, let it go. But then when they started to talk about how he's going to move forward, I was thinking, yeah, I think I'm with Colin on this one. Sometimes you just got to sort of bend the rules a little bit to try and, even up the odds. But, yeah, so that's what I did there.
It's awkward because there isn't really a good defense you have, other than the fact, you don't want to lose your friend. But it's interesting. I don't know how much I'm allowed to spoil this, I guess, but, in the comics, Colin's quite important to the second run of comics, and if The Wolf Among Us decides to use that as a basis for season 2, actually, I don't know if in season 2 Colin may or may not be at the farm. When season 2 of the game starts, is there going to be a version where Colin's on the farm for some people? Is that what we're saying?
I don't even remember seeing him in the trailer, to be honest. I mean, they've only released one trailer, I think, so far, but I don't think I remember seeing Colin in it.
Yeah, but the if they follow the comics, the second season will be largely about the farm. That was the focus of it in the comics. Yeah, and I won't say too much about what happens, but yeah, Colin is in that one quite a lot because I think the start of that one is Snow takes Colin to the farm, and that's kind of how season 2 starts. But again, I've no idea. They followed season 1 of the comics really vaguely. They kind of took the opening of someone's been murdered, who is it, but kind of completely changed all the ending and the players and stuff. So I don't know. Yeah. But it's interesting if they go down that road with this whole choice between Colin and Toad.
I think it just depends how much creative license they have then, isn't it? If they do want to follow the comics, then I imagine they will go down that path. But if they don't, if they want to do something completely different, I mean, me and Liam literally put a video out a couple of weeks ago where apparently like the guy who sort of like created the whole universe was like quite critical of what they did with The Wolf Among Us season 1. So you don't know whether like they've got their own ideas and they're just gonna sort of bin the comic ideas or what, but we'll have to see what they do, I guess. But yeah, so we're gonna move on to the second choice. Obviously Narissa wants to have a little bit of a chat with you. She says that she's got some information that she wants to share, but I sort of found this a little bit frustrating because it was like, you've got information to share, but then whenever you try to get something out of her, she's like, oh, my lips are sealed. So I mean, I did the sort of aggressive route, I guess, and I just tried to remove the ribbon from her because I'm guessing that was some sort of reasoning as to how behind the whole mystery. What about you guys? Starting with you, Luke.
I can't remember what I did with episode 4. I can't remember what I originally did for a lot of these choices, but I know I didn't take the ribbon off. But I remember thinking, like, Narissa's come to the office to give you information. I understand that's tricky for her, but if you're going to come all the way to the office, surely you'd have like some form of plan. Like you would go like, right, I can't say it outright, but I'll do this to get around the problem. But she just kind of like wanders in and goes, not really a lot I can say. And I was like, Narissa, come on, help us out.
So this is the exact thing I had. I mean, admittedly, at the end of the scene, she does say, doesn't she, yes, go to Beauty and Beasts. But I was like, you were really fortunate that thingy rocked up the door in order to share that information, because otherwise you have literally just come here and wasted your time. But anyway, what about you, Liam?
Yeah, like, no, I get what you mean. I wonder if she could have like found a loophole, like done it through like, I don't know, Hangman or Pictionary or something. I wonder if that would have like not been against the rules. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, to be honest, I mean, I don't know if this is a bit of a nothing choice because, like, you know, you learn what the ribbon means, or kind of like that, you know, that's what's kind of restricting her. I think is at this point you learn. I'm not sure the value of not taking it off if you don't learn that till later anyway. But like, if I was to replay it, I guess I wouldn't because I know what it means anyway. But I'm pretty sure, like, I watched a playthrough, and yeah, like obviously the person tried to remove the ribbon, and then you can comfort her anyway. So it's not like you burn any bridges with Narissa there. So yeah, probably an empty choice. So I'm not too sure on that one though.
Pretty sure that's what I did as well. Actually, I tried to remove it, and then I immediately comforted her. But yeah, I can't remember what will come of it, but I'll soon see when I play episode 5. I mean, the next choice, it's basically identical to the Colin one. It's whether you send Toad to the farm or not. So again, we'll start with you, Liam, this time.
Toad to the farm, I don't think I did. Then again, I might be mixing up with Colin earlier. I think one of them definitely did end up at the farm, and it was revealed in like episode 5 who it was. It might have been Toad, actually. It might have been that I didn't want it to happen, but it did anyway. So yeah, but yeah, obviously, if I had the choice, I'd want him to not go to the farm, you know?
Yeah, I remember in my original playthrough, I ended up with like a bunch of money again. I can't remember how. I must have swiped it from somewhere. And I ended up paying Toad to like get the glamour. But I want to say, like, he doesn't actually spend it on the glamour. He goes out and spends it on something else and ends up going to the farm anyway. And I remember being like, oh, for God, I tried to help you at every avenue. And you just end up getting into shit with Snow. I think that's more of what the choice does. I think Toad has to go to the farm. And, you know, maybe the farm isn't what season 2 is about, but maybe they were thinking of the farm being season 2 at some point. So they wanted to get Toad there to set that up. Maybe that was their idea when they wrote this scene. So I think Toad does go to the farm, but I think it's again how well you and Snow are acting as a team. And at the moment it's very frayed because I've wolfed out, I've killed Tweedle D, I didn't burn the tree, and I let Toad go. So right now Snow and me are like crumbling. But story wise, I think that's quite interesting for my playthrough at the moment. I quite like the fact we were like started off as this really cool unit, and now we're like polar opposites. It's really interesting.
Oh, fair enough. I mean, yeah. As for me, yeah, I told him that he shouldn't go to the farm. But you know what? As we was all talking then, I just sort of thought back to episode 1 when I think it was you, Luke, that was saying that like you really like the character of Colin. and I think you said that you like Toad as well. And I was just going to say, like, because it's them characters were very like episode 1 heavy, and we're now in like episode 4. Is there a part of you that wishes that we got slightly more of Toad and Colin, you know, throughout like episodes 2 and 3? Because I've got to admit, I noticed it a little bit, because I do like them 2 characters, and I did think to myself, like, oh, like I wish there was a little bit more of them, you know?
Colin, yes, but I think the Toad has been put into like the game quite well. Like, he crops up a lot of the time, but it doesn't feel like forced or anything. He feels natural. And I think that's something this game's very good at doing. It finds a good reason to bring the characters back without it seeming like they're trying to just get our favourites in. It happens very naturally.
Yeah, that's fair. And I guess at the same time, like, you don't want to shoehorn characters into the plot, do you? Like, you don't want to constantly have to go back to Bigby's apartment to see Colin. So yeah, I completely get your point. I mean, moving on to the next choice, it's your classic Wolf Among Us. Which location do you want to go to first? Now, of course, after we've been in like the sort of business centre room place, we can decide whether we want to go to the cut above, the butchers, or we can go to the Lucky Pawn. So I'll start with you, Luke. Where did you go? And also, this is open to both of you. Do you know whether it matters, like whether you go to one location first or not?
I'm not sure how it matters, and I think I want to say this one matters like the least. I think because I think you always end up with the same amount of information. But I went to the Lucky Pawn first because it was name dropped maybe a little bit more than the butcher was. I remember seeing like the butcher like at Anti Greenleaf's, but I remember the pawn came up quite a lot in episode 3, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I kind of went there.
For me, I mean, I did a bit of research on this, and the Wolf Among Us kind of forum naturally agrees that the pawn probably is the better one to go to first. So, like, if you go to the pawn, you'll sort of see Jack and Toad having a little chat, and there's some dialogue between them, which is both, you know, quite interesting and also amusing as well, apparently. So it's cool to see that, but also, you know, you'll have that big fight, and apparently it's just aesthetically better to really intimidate the butcher with a bloody shirt when you walk in there. A lot of people say it's just got a nicer effect, and it almost is probably the one that seems naturally better. The only difference is if you go to the butcher second, the butcher first, is that Big B will get more dialogue with the butcher, apparently, and also when you go into that back room later on, there's a blackboard with some chalk names that'll be wiped off if you go there second. So the details are really minor, but yeah, apparently it is just slightly better to go to the pawn first. I know that when I did it, I went to the butcher first. I've just got a strong memory of doing that. But yeah, probably should have gone pawn. But like you say, it is actually quite a minor one. You get the info you need anyway.
Oh, fair enough. I mean, that's the thing. Although it is minor, I do quite like that, because I did actually go to the butcher's first, so I would have had more dialogue with him, and I saw all the names and figures and stuff on that blackboard. But yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah, I mean, we've said this already, but just like we know, like how linear, because it's TellTale, it's old TellTale, but like how linear that these games are. But you know, you take your little victories where you can. The fact that there is like slight little deviations here and there, we'll take it every day of the week. And then of course we've got this final choice here, and it's basically, what have I got written down here? I'm in the minority, I think 17%, and I had decided to talk to the crooked man. I don't know what the other option. I think one of them was like threaten him or hit him or something like that. I can't remember what the other ones were. So yeah, I'll go over to you, Luke. What did you do?
I just lit my cigarette and said nothing, and I just sat down and lit on my cigarette, and like, oh my god, I'm so glad I did that, because it is like one of my. It's a bit of a weird one, because in many ways, I think it is like the weakest ending, because it doesn't end with this big cliffhanger. And like, you're there as this villain, and I was like, oh, something's going to go down, because like the cliffhangers have been like amazing in this game. And like all he does is light up a cigarette. But over time, it has become such an iconic Wolf Among Us moment for me that like I've come the other way with it, and I absolutely love this ending. I just think it's amazing.
Yeah, I'm fully with Luke on this one. You just light the cigarette, and then the kind of the sound of the lighter is the last thing you hear before it just goes to black. And I absolutely love everything about that ending. But yeah, like obviously with TellTale, you know, they're not shy on doing a big dramatic ending, whether, you know, there's a big Russian, you know, versus American shootout, and you know there's guns and you don't know who's dead. It might be that someone gets shot in the face and it ends with a big death, or like, you know, a beheading. You know, we've seen that this series. This one wasn't like a big sort of like choicey, oh, life or death thing. This was just a nice little subtle sort of like artistic ending. But yeah, I completely agree. It might be my favorite ending to a TellTale episode ever. It was just so cool and neat.
Oh, nice. I mean, for me, I decided to talk to him. I think he still lights up a cigarette, but he says something like, yeah, let's talk, and then he does that and then it cuts to black. But what I found really sort of interesting, or like from something I didn't forget, well, I remember rather, from when I last played it, was just that how many of these characters you come across, like whether it's Tim in the corridor before, even Beast, as you're starting to uncover what's going on with this crooked man and how far this sort of conspiracy and whatnot goes around Fabletown, just how like compliant some of the other characters are. I mean, I'm guessing it's because he does have them under his thumb to some extent, but characters like Beast, where, you know, he sort of says, oh, well, I need a job, and you know, that obviously Tim, he's like, oh, he's not that bad, you know. And it's interesting, just like how, from like a moral perspective, like how this crooked man, it's sort of like, well, we've seen him at the minute as like this sort of complete enemy, where he's enslaving different fables, and he's obviously got this glamour that's circulating like black market. But there are people that are facilitating that, and these are people that we've met and spoke to throughout the entire game. So I don't know if that influenced my decision where I was like, let's sit down and talk. But yeah, it just sort of, I don't know, it sort of showed me just like how murky and grey like even some of your familiar characters might be. It might be sort of like an interesting future video, I don't know. But yeah, that pretty much wraps up the choices. So guys, are there any particular talking points for this episode that you wanted to raise?
I've got two really off the top of my head. I mean, one like we didn't speak about because there's no choice there, so of course. But yeah, like I just really enjoyed the Beauty and Beast scene where you sort of go and meet them, where they sort of say, oh yeah, like we learn all this stuff because we're accustomed to a certain lifestyle, and that's just like really interesting from the perspective that, you know, their old selves, their old fable selves are still existent, you know, their habits and, you know, their behavior, who they are, and that bleeds through to this modern day thing with all the glamour and stuff. So I just felt that was really interesting. And I also just wanted to comment on how funny and how lame Beast's excuse is when he hangs up the phone and says, oh, I think we're one digit off from a pizza place. Like, this is the detective, you can tell when people are lying. And then he pulls that out of his ass, and I'm just like, Beast, mate, come on, like, what are you doing, buddy?
See, is that with the phone?
Yeah.
He didn't pick up the phone on my one. I just let the message play out. And I tell you what, that's actually an amazing scene. It's like a really tense scene, and there's the daftest voicemail message, and that was comedy gold, because it's played like oh my god, who is that? It's going to be the crooked man, it might be Bloody Mary, and then like it's just this, they're like really freaking daft in it, and I thought that was a brilliant piece of direction.
Yeah, because that's the thing, he didn't answer it. Like, I let it play for a little while, but then a choice come up, and then I went to pick it up, but then whoever it was obviously like dropped it or something on the other end. But that's pretty cool that Beast can actually pick up the call in the first place, because I always assumed it was that a very linear thing that only Big B would pick it up. So you had another one you wanted to add, mate?
Yeah, I mean, actually thought of another one on top of that, but the one I wanted to mention is I wanted to chat a little bit about a character who we haven't really dwelled into too much, and that is Bluebeard. Now, it might be that my opinion changes when I see episode 5, but I don't know, one thing I want to comment on is that I just feel like a little bit of a weak character I'm not really getting. I feel like maybe either there is a little bit of a red herring, like kind of like, oh, this could be a potential suspect or someone who's tied in, like any kind of crime or mystery thing should be. But you know, even with say someone like Ichabod Crane, like, you know, someone who, you know, has the evil antics, you know, with the perversions and stuff, you know, at least we know he's not fully evil and he's just this like lonely, desperate man, and there's just that edge to him. Bluebeard's just one dynamic is he's just an like person who goes against you, and anything that comes out of his mouth is just to attack Bigby, and then he's just this angry man. And I don't know if you guys agree with me on this one, but I'm not saying he's a poorly written character or he's just really weak, but I'm just not really getting his purpose. He's just there to just kind of hinder you a little bit. And yeah, I'm just each time Bluebeard appears on screen, I'm just not really getting it, and I guess I'm not just really enjoying it. I know like this, it might sound really controversial, but it almost just sounds like, oh, it's just a like way of getting Dave Fennoy's voice, you know, on the thing more. I don't know, probably a little bit of a harsh stretch there. But yeah, I just wanted to get your guys' takes on Bluebeard.
So I understand what you're saying, and I do think that maybe it comes back to this idea of like the characters like coming back up into the plot without being forced in. But I do think Bluebeard starts his story as a red herring, as you said, but he is so much of a, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on the show, you can bleep it out if you want, he starts with so much of a dick that he's too clearly evil to be the killer. You know, he is definitely like a red herring, and I think they cleverly don't keep on trying, but what they do instead is they kind of bring him back into the plot in the most sensible way they could, which is to kind of make him like that rich guy that just disagrees with how it's run, but you know wouldn't do any better. And I kind of think he helps facilitate Snow's story maybe more than Bigby's, which is why I think that's why you're not really getting his character too much. But I think that, yeah, kind of like he's just kind of like, you realize how hard it is for Snow to do her job with a character like Bluebeard.
Yeah, I feel like maybe he was stronger when, like, before the Crane reveal, like, in episode 2, because it's like, oh, if there's, like, a leak, or if there's, like, someone bad who's, you know, on our side, you think, oh, maybe it could be him, and then when it's Crane, I just guess, like, I was, like, of the mindset, oh, I strongly doubt they'll make Bluebeard the same as well, you know, because, like, Bluebeard then goes against Crane. So I just feel like his presence in episode 3 and 4, I just felt like it just fell a little flat for me, I don't know. So it's just, yeah, like, obviously, like you say, there's so many good characters. Everyone's placed really well whenever they come on, and I think his ones just probably serve less of a purpose or just appear weaker to me than, say, other characters.
I agree with you with episode 4, this one, but I do think, actually, I really like the fact that, like, with episode 3, he went to the place you didn't go to, and I felt that added, like, a new dynamic on that where do you go first situation. So I would say I enjoy Bluebeard in episode 3.
Actually, yeah, no, I will take that one. Maybe I'm just going off this episode because I like the fact that he could burn evidence in a place you don't go, and he can actually ruin you getting certain clues and leads. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I stand by the point where I feel like Bluebeard ends up being like one of the weaker characters for me.
Yeah, I think for me, it's sort of whenever I have a Bluebeard scene, I do sort of sit there and think, oh, it's, you know, Lee Everett, Walking Dead season 1, like, which, you know, obviously the guy who voices Bigby is Andy St. John, and I never think that. I think it's Bigby. So maybe it's because he's somewhat of a minor character, but yeah, I do see what you mean, that he can come somewhat like a little bit of a spare part. He's just there to nag you, and who knows, maybe if, like, you know, if he was to go missing or something and the Crane reveal was pushed back a little bit, maybe he could have then had a bit more involvement, you know, as part of the mystery, and maybe people would think that it was potentially him that was involved. I don't know, but I do see where you're coming from, to be honest.
I think as well, like, the way he's slotted there is that he's kind of a slow burn. He doesn't do too much, but also, like, you know, he could be a really big part of, you know, season 2, for example. So he's almost there, like, almost shelved, and he could still have a really massive role to play. So yeah, you know, it might be that, like, that's what the purpose was with him. The other thing I was going to mention is just say, like, the overall review or quality of the episode. I mean, Jack, me and you were speaking a little bit about it before, but I'm thinking, like, not that this is a bad episode, but potentially the weakest out of the 4 we've had so far. So it might end up being the weakest episode of the whole thing. I'll have to see what episode 5 is like again. But yeah, Luke, do you reckon this might end up being one of the weaker episodes you've played?
Yeah, like last time I was here, I said I didn't want to take part in any episode ranking because I think they all do their job. And I do think episode 4 does its job. Unfortunately, yes, if you were to force me to do that ranking, I know that episode 4 would be bottom. And I think some of it is it definitely has the weakest intro. Like, the intro is just Big B's arm getting put back, and then, like, he meets Narissa. And, like, when the opening credits came in, I was like, oh, is that the opening sequence? Like, I thought we had already had it, weirdly, because we've had such strong opening sequences, and episode 4 was a bit rubbish. And while it grew on me, the cliffhanger, I remember when I first saw it, was like, oh, was that it? That feels a bit short. And while I understand that over time it's kind of become one of my favorites, I do think like this one just didn't quite hit the spot first time round as the others did.
Gotta say, I agree with all of that. I've literally written this down here that I found the first like 20-30 minutes of this episode kind of boring. I felt that there was a little bit too much dependent on like just sort of character interactions, and maybe there wasn't enough movement or just enough cutscenes to naturally break it up. You were just going from place to place, moving from around the room, having these conversations. And for me, it wasn't actually until we got to the choice where we was going to the lucky pawn or the cut above where I started to really get a little bit more invested in the episode, because I know I've used this word before, but it felt like there was a little bit of padding involved, because we knew what this episode was about. It was to try and find the Crooked Man, and obviously you had to find that Jersey Devil guy to get to him. And like in the build up to that, it was just sort of like a little bit of exposition, lots of characters talking to bring something else into the fold. And yeah, like I said, what we said in the last one, the first 3, I feel like, yeah, you've got arguments either way for, the best, the worst, the middle, whatever. But I think after playing this one, I was like, yeah, I think this is the weakest so far for me.
I think as well, if you just look at like the 5 choices which were advertised at the end, I think that kind of like tells you really like, the overall quality of the episode, like you being worse than the others, just because like 2 of the choices are literally, oh, did you send Colin to the farm? Did you send Toad to the farm? So they're almost identical in a way. And then like, did you attempt to remove the ribbon is one. Like that, I would say is one of the bottom barrel weaker choices. And then one is just, oh, how did you conclude the episode? Like, what sort of ending did you get? And that doesn't really matter. It's just kind of how you signed off the episode. So, like, you could almost argue the only noteworthy choice, really. I mean, that's a harsh comment, because I do get, like, sending to the farm can almost affect the ending, so it appears at the end in the trials, perhaps. But yeah, like, the only sort of real, choice that I would say was a top-tier choice in this is just which location did you go to first? And even like, we've had this many times before with like Prince Lawrence or Toad, or whether you go to say like Crane's apartment, Tweedledee's office, or the Trip Trap. Those 2 you could arguably say are like the stronger of the which location did you go to first out of the other ones. So yeah, like I think you could just look at the end choices, and that probably, is a nice, pardon the pun, telltale sign of, like how good the episode was.
I agree with all of that. I do think there is this idea with Wolf Among Us, and that definitely is clear in the next episode. But like, I feel we've had our choices now, and the rest of the game is almost like this is what your choices mean. And I think that's more clear in the 5th one. And I think this one is a bit of padding. But just to make it perfectly clear, when I say this is the weakest one, I would still rate it above any of the episodes of The Expanse. Like,
oh, agreed.
Yeah. It is strong. There is actually one other thing that I have against this episode, and again, I still love this episode to pieces, but you were talking about the whole Tiny Tim thing, Jack, about how like the Crooked Man's like in a morally grey area. I do think one part of the episode that could have been done a bit better, because he's been built up to be this horrible man, and especially when you go to the cut above and you like literally see people being chained and forced to make glamours. and you're like, this is a really horrible man. And then in the final scene, they bring in Tiny Tim, who we've not really seen before. I think he like pops up in episode 1 and doesn't have any lines. And then Tiny Tim's like, oh, he's a good bloke actually. And I know what they're trying to do, but they're doing it way too late in the day. There is no point where I was thinking, oh, the Crooked Man might be all right actually. Like, yeah, I felt that could have been done better. And in many ways, I think the Crooked Man might be the weakest of the villains. Because I think Bloody Mary's definitely top. But I think like all the other ones, like I love the Jersey Devil. I love like the Tweedledum and Tweedledee. They do their job. Georgie, we have spoke about how good he was. I think the Crooked Man could maybe have been written a bit better, or they should have just committed to him being evil man and kind of like sacked off the Tiny Tim scene.
Yeah, I mean, naturally for me, I'm always a little bit, when it comes to like mysteries, murder mysteries and stuff like that, I prefer it when you've already seen the big bad, like a character you've already met. I feel like when you've got this big build up as to who this man is, I feel like it would have been a nice twist if, say, Bluebeard, was the Crooked Man, or someone in there. I feel that, but that's just a personal preference thing. I think when you suddenly introduce the villain that late into the game, you're then really relying on stuff that's gone previous to really build up his character. And if that hasn't been nailed, then you're then asking a lot of the character in very little time to then deliver something to make you think, oh yeah, this guy, he's a bit of a dick, we've got to kill him, we've got to sort him out. So yeah, I mean, a little minor quibble from me there, but I do get what you mean on the writing front.
The Crooked Man just should have been the ginger guy. That would have been epic. Just saying it.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm going is like, it was that or the missing cat. I was like, oh, they're going to be the villain. Like, as if like it would have been rubbish if like you got to the ending, it was just a cat. Like, oh, Bigby, I was behind it all along. So I'm glad they didn't do that. But I think that's like the magic mirror. With the magic mirror, and you could like see what anyone's doing at any given time. I feel like they almost were forced to have a character that you hadn't met. So like you couldn't just go, well, why didn't they do that? Like, I mean, hypothetically, you could just be going, magic mirror, show me Bluebeard 24/7. Like, and then you would like solve the mystery. So I kind of understand why they've done that. And I mean, I don't mind the Crooked Man being the worst of the villains because he still does his job. But I understand it's like a mystery, and it would have been nice to kind of like with the crane twist. It would have been nice to have like that again.
One thing I wanted to just comment on as well is like, I know before you mentioned the quality, and we mentioned it in the last episode of how good Bloody Mary is as a villain, right? And I think it's just the sheer threat of the fact that, she shot you with silver, the fact that she really like minuscules like, being dumb. But I just wanted to really like tip my hat to the scene where you look and spy on Crane in the mirror and she's there, and then she can sense you're watching. And it just made her even more dangerous. And like, you don't even see her in the flesh. The only time you see her this episode is in that little mirror scene, and it's still kind of added to the kind of danger of her. So like, it really kind of like built on, all these threats and dangers up until episode 5. So yeah, like, really strong villain who, yeah, like I just have to sing my praises to again.
And I love that they were like, we don't really need a big scene with her because she's done her job. And like, while I think another argument that was the weakest is that I think I wanted loads of Bloody Mary, and they went, you know what, we're fine there. We're going to give you one scene just so no one moans, but we're going to show off everyone else. And I think that was very brave. And I think on reflection, that was the right decision. But I know in the moment, I was a little bit upset with the lack of Bloody Mary.
Oh, good stuff. I mean, Luke, have you got any points on the episode that you wanted to bring up?
I've just got like, not really discussions. I've just got things I like. I thought Snow White was amazing in this one. I really like her character. And I think because Bigby and Snow, because they're in it all the time, I think maybe we don't talk about just how great they are, but Snow, especially in the 4th one, is such a great character. I've also said Johan the butcher. Like there's this bit where he's having a go like, where were you guys? Why didn't you help me out when my thing was when my shop was taken? And I'm like, you never even asked for help. Don't get salty with me. Like, but like this wasn't even on our radar. and I thought that was quite amusing. But yeah, like I said, there's not really discussion. I just like it, and I wanted to put some good things in, seeing as I feel like I've slated this one up slightly. Lots of things I like though.
One little comment I've got actually is Big B must have been a really shit sheriff before we kind of was able to play him in the game, because like everyone's like, yeah, you don't help us, and I wonder like what did Big B actually do before like the kind of game of Wolf Among Us, because he, other than Snow, he's not, and Colin, he's just got like no sort of, you know, like it seems like no work got done before and no one likes him. So yeah, I just yeah, was Sheriff like was Big B a really like lousy sheriff before?
I think there wasn't a murder. Like this is like it's kind of implied this is the first time he's actually been able to use his skills. And I imagine all the other times he was literally just telling them off, like kind of like, Toad, get your glamour on. Jack, stop robbing the place. Like, so I don't think he was bad at his job. I just think he was like their enemy.
That, or all this time he's just been waiting for a case. He's just been doing dramatic walking, pouting for the Instagram shots under some dimly lit streets and neon lights and stuff. As soon as there's a case, oh shit, I've actually got to use my skill set now to try and solve something. But yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure that's a wrap there, guys, for episode 4, The Wolf Among Us. We've basically said it's the weakest episode, but it's still by no means bad. It's just that the other episodes were better. So those of you watching, do let us know what your comments were and what your choices were for this episode. And we will see you in the final episode, episode 5. Catch you then.
See you soon, guys.
Bye.